There's a $23 trillion market coming for green products. We should be the leaders and the owners, and we should have that 1.2 million manufacturing jobs here in America. We can do this.
We're going to turn to the issue of health care right now.
It's health care time.
Where there may or may not be daylight between you. Many people watching at home have health insurance.
It's health care time. This is going to be great.
Who here
should be the
abolish
leaders and the owners, and we should have that 1.2
million? Just a show of hands.
Just two.
Senator Klobuchar, let me put the question to you. You're one of the Democrats who wants to keep private insurance in addition to a government health care plan. Why is an incremental approach, in your view, better than a sweeping overhaul?
Well, I think it's a bold approach. It's something that Barack Obama wanted to do when we were working on the Affordable Care Act, and that is a public option. I am just simply concerned about kicking half of America off of their health insurance in 4 years, which is exactly what this bill says. So let me go on beyond that. There is a much bigger issue in addition to that, and that is
I like how
pharmaceuticals.
Beto just looks awkward.
The president literally went on TV, on Fox, and said that people's heads would spin when they see how much he would bring down pharmaceutical prices. Instead, 2,500 drugs have gone up in double digits since he came into office. Instead, he gave $100 billion in giveaways to the pharma companies. For the rest of us, for the rest of America, that's what we call at home, all foam and no beer.
What?
All foam and no beer. I've never heard that term before.
My proposal is
it's
to
Minnesota.
do something about pharma, to take them on, to allow negotiation
You're
under
not that far
Medicare,
from
to bring
Minnesota,
in less
though.
expensive drugs from other countries. And pharma thinks they own Washington. Well, they don't own
Yes,
me.
they do.
Thank you.
Yeah, big companies definitely own Washington.
You signed on to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan. It would put essentially everybody on Medicare and then eliminate private plans that offer similar coverage.
Your face is freaky to me.
Is that the plan or path that you would
the Native
pursue
American
as president?
So yes, I'm with Bernie
like
on Medicare for
actually
all.
Native
And let me tell you
American
why.
or like
I spent a big chunk of my
1%?
life
She's
studying why families go broke.
1,000th
And one of the
Native
number
American.
one reasons
Oh, okay,
is the
that's
cost
this
of
lady.
Healthcare, medical bills. And that's not just for people who don't have insurance. It's for people who have insurance. Look at the business model of an insurance company. It's to bring in as many dollars as they can in premiums
Bad
and
video
to pay
settings.
out
What's
as
wrong with
few
my bad
dollars
video
as
settings?
possible for your health
Frames are not
care.
being sent.
That leaves
All right,
families
I'll turn
with
this down.
rising premiums, rising co-pays, and fighting with insurance companies to try to get the health care that their doctors say that they and their children need.
Since I'm in my room now.
Medicare for All solves that problem. And I understand. There are a lot of politicians who say, oh, it's just not possible, we just can't do it, it's have a lot of political reasons for this. What they're really telling you is they just won't fight for it. Well, healthcare
it's a
is a
service.
basic human right.
Yeah,
and I
it
will
is
fight
definitely a
for
service.
basic human rights.
Congressman O'Rourke, when you ran for Senate, you also praised a bill that would replace private insurance. This year, you're saying you're no longer sure. Can you explain why?
My goal is to ensure that every American is well enough to live to their full potential because they have health care.
He always meets somebody and brings it up.
27 years old, told me that he'd been to a doctor once in his life. And on that visit, he was told he had diabetes, he was told he had glaucoma, and he was told untreated because he doesn't have health care, he'll be dead before the age
He gave
of 40.
himself diabetes.
So getting to guaranteed, high-quality, universal
You give yourself
healthcare
type 2
as
diabetes.
quickly and surely as possible has to be our goal.
Yeah,
the ability to afford your prescriptions and go to a primary care provider.
There's a shortage
the
of
ability
primary
to see
doctors
a
in the
mental
country.
health care provider. In Texas, the single largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system today. And healthcare also has to mean that every woman can make her own decisions.
You gotta throw
about her
that
own
out
body
there.
And has access to the care
it's like
that makes that possible.
the super thing right now.
Says that if you're uninsured, we enroll you in Medicare. If you're insufficiently insured, you can't afford your premiums, we enroll you in Medicare. But if you're a member of a union that negotiated for a health care plan that you like because it works for you,
your time is up.
family,
You lost
you're
to
able
Ted
to keep it.
Cruz.
We
Get the
preserve
fuck off the
choice
stage.
by making sure that everybody has
time is
healthcare.
up, Congressman, but I do want to ask a follow-up on this one. Just to be very clear, I'll give you 10 seconds. Would you replace private insurance?
No, I think that choice is fundamental to our ability to get everybody cared for.
Private insurance is not working for tens of millions of Americans. When you talk about the co-pays, the deductibles, the premiums, the out-of-pocket expenses, it's not working.
That's right. So for those for whom it's not working, they can choose Medicare. For the coronary workers in Nevada who I listened to, who negotiated for those plans, they're able to keep them.
Why are you defending private insurance?
Say they like their private
Is that
health
John
insurance,
Delaney?
by the way.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Americans. I mean, I think we should be the party that keeps what's working and fixes what's broken.
You can tell those are dentures.
I mean, doesn't that make sense? I
the
mean,
bottom teeth,
we should give everyone in this country health care as a basic human right for free.
I don't know if that really counts as means his opinion's wrong.
But we should also give them the option to buy private insurance. Why do we have to stand for taking away something from people? And also, it's bad policy. If you go to every hospital in this country and you ask them one question, which is, how would it have been for you last year if every one of your bills were paid at the Medicare rate? Every single hospital administrator said they would close. And the Medicare for All bill requires payments to stay at current Medicare rates. So to some extent, we're basically supporting a bill that will have every hospital closed. I mean, my dad was a union electrician, right? I actually grew up.
Oh, I just realized that I should probably add the links to this video in the description so I don't get like.
And I just always think about my dad and anything I would do from a policy perspective.
Obviously, we're not fucking hosting this.
Good job, John, for
I mean, obviously.
for every American. Why are you taking my health care away?
I've let this play out a little bit because I'm fascinated to hear the daylight between you. Congresswoman Gabbard, weigh in here.
Oh, Tulsi didn't say she would replace it with Medicare for all.
You're talking about one bill over another bill. Really what we're talking about is our objective, making sure that every single sick American in this country is able to get the health care that they need. I believe Medicare for all is the way to do that. I also think that employers will recognize how much money will be saved by supporting a Medicare for All program. A program that will reduce the administrative costs, reduce the bureaucratic costs, and make sure that everyone gets that quality health care that they need. I also think if you look at other countries in the world who have universal health care, every one of them has some form of a role of private insurance. I think that's what we've got to look at, taking the best of these ideas, but making sure unequivocally that no sick American goes without getting the care that they need, regardless of how much or little money they have in their pocket.
Congresswoman, let me turn to Senator Booker on this. Senator Booker, explain to me where you are. This is hugely important to people. So
the 50-year-old virgin.
I absolutely will. First of all, we're talking about this as a healthcare issue.
He really is.
In communities like mine, low-income communities, it's an education issue.
Yeah, he's not married, has no kids, nothing.
Are not going to succeed in school. It is an issue for jobs and employment because people that do not have good health care do not succeed at work. It's even a retirement issue because in my community, African Americans have a lower life expectancy because of poorer health care. And so where I stand is very clear. Health care is not just a human right, it should be an American right.
Shut up.
And I believe the best way to get there is Medicare for all, but I have an urgency about this. When I am president of the United States, I'm not going to wait. We have to do the things immediately that are going to provide better care. And on this debate, I'm sorry, there are too many people profiteering off of the pain of people in America, from pharmaceutical companies to insurers. Literally, the overhead for insurers that they charge is 15%, while Medicare's overhead is only at 2%. We can do this better, and every single day I will be fighting to give people more access and more affordable costs until we get to my goal, which is every American having
Literally 4 people are trying to reply.
And that is that the insurance companies last year alone sucked $23 billion in profits out of the healthcare system. $23 billion, and that doesn't count the money that was paid to executives, the money that was spent lobbying Washington. We have a giant industry that wants our healthcare system to stay the way it is, because it's not working for families, but it sure as heck working for them. It's time for us to make families come first.
It should not be an option in the United States of America for any insurance company to deny women coverage for their exercise of their
Where did this come from?
I have no idea.
I'm the only candidate here.
Oh, that was weird. I just got loading.
Who has passed a law protecting a woman's
abortions would be outlawed under Medicare for all, by the way.
Really? I'm the only candidate.
Yeah, because the Hyde Amendment prevents taxpayer dollars from paying for abortions.
But we do have one candidate that's actually advanced the ball.
Healthcare was taxpayer-funded, abortions would be illegal, pretty much.
Interesting. Your
Look
time
how many
is
people
up.
are trying to fucking...
I'm fascinated by this, Senator Klobuchar.
I just want to say there's 3 women up here that have fought.
Oh my gosh, you partisan fucks.
So I'll start with that. And then I just want to make very clear, I think we share the goal of universal health care. And the idea I put out there, the public option, which the governor was just
drop my
talking
quality by one.
about. This idea is that you use Medicare or Medicaid without any insurance companies involved. You could do it either way. And the estimates are 13 million people would see a reduction in their premiums. 12 more million people would get covered. So I think it is a beginning, and the way you start and the way you move to universal health care.
They've had updates to their
Secretary
policy.
Castro, this one is for you. All of you on stage support a woman's right to an abortion. You all support some version of a government health care option.
No.
Would your plan cover abortion, Mr. Secretary?
So we can't.
Yes,
hold
it
on.
would.
We can't make fun of.
Only in
Right? We can't make fun of age,
freedom.
caste,
I believe in reproductive
disability,
justice.
ethnicity, gender identity,
You know what that means
nationality,
is that just because
race,
a woman,
I'm about to
immigration
make fun
status,
of I'm about to make fun of
someone in the
gender.
trans community,
religion,
trans
sex/gender, sexual orientation.
All
right, guys, comment on what he said. I'm about to get us banned because, yeah, nobody should have to pay for cutting your dick off.
More than that,
Victims of major violent events or their kin in veteran status.
Oh, he shouted out your state, Missouri.
Person's right to choose is under assault in places like Missouri, in Alabama, in Georgia. I would appoint judges to the federal bench that understand the precedent of Roe v. Wade and will respect it. And in addition to that, make sure that we fight hard as we transition our healthcare system to one where everybody can get and exercise that right.
Senator Warren, would you put limits on any limits on abortion?
I would make certain that every woman has access to the full range of reproductive health care services.
But not my right to have an AR.
Birth control,
Okay.
It includes abortion. It includes everything for a woman. And I want to add on that, it's not enough for us to expect the courts to protect us. 47 years ago, Roe versus Wade was decided, and we've all looked to the courts all that time as state after state has undermined Roe, has put in exceptions, has come right up to the edge of taking away protection.
Your time is up, Senator.
We now have an America where most people support
Her time is up.
We need to make
Her
that
time is up.
Thank you. Jose?
Thank you. Senator Booker, I want to kind of come back on a discussion we were having about health and the opioid crisis. You represent a state where 14 of the 20 largest pharmaceutical companies are based. Should pharmaceutical companies that manufacture these drugs be held criminally liable for what they do?
No.
They should absolutely be held criminally liable because they are liable and responsible. This is one of the reasons why, well before I was running for president, I said I would not take contributions from pharma companies, not take contributions from corporate tax or pharma executives, because they are part of this problem.
His eyes are kind of like fish eyes.
Addiction in our
Yeah,
country.
I
We in
noticed
cities like
that.
mine have been seeing how we've tried to arrest our way out of addiction for too long. It is time that we have a national urgency to deal with this problem and make the solutions that are working to actually be the law of our land and make the pharmaceutical companies that are responsible help to pay for that.
Congressman O'Rourke, how would you deal with it?
Tonight in this country, you have 2.3 million of our fellow Americans behind bars. It's the largest prison population on the face of the planet. Many are there for nonviolent drug crimes, including possession of marijuana, at a time that more than half the states have legalized it or decriminalized it. And yet, despite what Purdue Pharma has done, their connection to the opioid crisis and the overdose deaths that we're seeing throughout this country, they've been able to act with complete impunity and pay no consequences, not a single night in jail.
I've never met a
Unless there's
heroin
accountability and justice, this crisis will continue. In my administration, we will hold them to account. We will make sure that they pay a price, and we will help those who've been victims of this malfeasance in this country, get them treatment and long-term care.
I know immigration is on a lot of your minds here, and I want to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in a moment. We need to take a break. We'll be back with more from Miami after this.
But I like how Tim Ryan's been trying to get a word in for like 5 minutes. I love how it says, okay, I'm going to take a little break to piss.
We begin tonight with
all
story. It sounds like a jet airplane out there, but that is fire.
Asking the questions you would ask.
What's it like flying into the hurricane zones?
Never seen anything like it.
Giving the context you need.
Let's talk about the MAX. How do you convince a skittish passenger to get on this airplane?
Lester Holt.
We've met a lot of great people doing a lot of great things in their community.
The most trusted TV news anchor in America.
That's Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt.
A very busy news day.
Today's high-stakes confrontation.
Let's go live to the border where our colleague...
Exclusive video.
The country's top intelligence officials testifying.
NBC News gets an exclusive look inside.
Live here at the nation's capital.
There's now an open investigation.
Blockbuster new reporting today on this.
This is the deadliest school shooting.
The Supreme Court upheld the revised version.
Well, this new report comes amid a staggering amount of news.
Breaking news tonight exclusively here.
NBC News was first out with this scoop today.
It's been an extraordinary night watching this develop. So, a lot to talk about.
Tomorrow, the first real test of the 2020 presidential race continues with night 2 of the Democratic candidates debate. Biden, Sanders, Buttigieg, and Harris battle it out with 6 others. Who will make the most of the moment? The first Democratic debate, moderated by Lester Holt, Savannah Guthrie, Jose Diaz-Balart, Chuck Todd, and Rachel Maddow. Tomorrow at 9 Eastern on NBC, MSNBC, and Telemundo.
Turn to an issue that has been in the news, especially this week.
I don't think my friend
There are undocumented children being held alone in detention, even as close as Homestead, Florida, right here, less than 30 miles from where we are tonight. Fathers and mothers and children are dying while trying to enter the United States of America. We saw that image today that broke our hearts, and they had names. Oscar Martinez and his 23-month-old daughter Valeria died trying to cross the river to ask for asylum in this country. Last month, more than 130,000 migrants were apprehended at the southern border. Secretary Castro, if you were president today, hoy, what would you specifically do?
Thank you very much, Jose. I'm very proud that in April I became the first candidate to put forward a comprehensive immigration plan. And we saw those images. Watching that image of Oscar and his daughter Valeria is heartbreaking. It should also piss us all off. If I were president today, and it should spur us to action, if I were president today, I would sign an executive order that would get rid of Trump's zero tolerance policy, the Remain in Mexico policy, and the metering policy. This metering policy is basically what prompted Oscar and Valeria.
Oh gosh, Julian Castro, nobody knows who the fuck you are. You were the Secretary of Fun, I think.
He's probably related to Fidel Castro.
People who are coming and trying to seek asylum at our ports of entry. Oscar and Valeria went to a port of entry, and then they were denied the ability to make an asylum claim. So they got frustrated, and they tried to cross the river, and they died because of that.
On day one, sorry.
On day one, I would do that executive order that would address metering, and then
it's about
in my first 100 days with immigration reform that would honor asylum claims, that would put undocumented immigrants, as long as they haven't committed a serious crime, on a pathway to citizenship, and then would go to the root cause of the issue, which is
hey, look at me, I'm Hispanic and I can speak with an accent. Vote for me.
And El Salvador, so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of coming to the United States to seek it.
Senator Booker, what would you do on day one? And this is a situation that the next president will inherit.
Yes. La situación ahora es inaceptable.
I don't speak this language.
What the fuck? They're trying to out-Spanish each other.
On day one, I will make sure.
Next president would inherit speaking forward language. I try to turn on captains out of curiosity.
Border policies are violating the human rights. When people come to this country, they do not believe their human rights at the border. Number two, I will make sure that we reinstate DACA, that we reinstate pathways to citizenship for DACA recipients, and to make sure that people that are here on temporary protected status can stay and remain here. And then finally, We need to make sure that we address
the issues that made
Australia in the first place by making major investments in the Northern Triangle, not like this president's doing, by ripping away the resources we need to
It's all worth it just to watch Cory Booker speak Spanish.
We cannot surrender our values and think that we're going to get border security. We
Please don't speak more Spanish.
Security and our values. We must fight for both.
If I might, very briefly, and this is an important point, you know, my plan,
very briefly, what the fuck you just say?
Senator Warren and Governor Inslee agree with me on this. My plan also includes getting rid of Section 1325 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, to go back to the way we used to treat this when somebody comes across the border, not to criminalize desperation, to treat that as a civil violation. And here's why it's important. We see all of this horrendous family separation. They use that law, Section 1325, to justify...
He said Jose. His name's not Jose, it's Julian.
And so I want to challenge every single candidate on this stage to support the repeal of Section 1325.
30 seconds.
Don't speak.
As my friend here said, I agree with him on that issue, but folks should understand that the separation of children from families doesn't just go on at our border. It happens in our community.
Oh, I got an error occurred. Did you get one?
No.
That was weird. I don't think I ever had that happen with a video.
That parent, that child.
That's Bill de Blasio.
I'm saying this as a father. Every American should feel that in their heart, and every American should say that is not America. Those are not our values. But we have to get under the skin of why we have this crisis in our system, because we're not being honest about the division that's been fomented in this country. The way that American citizens have been told that immigrants somehow created their misery and their pain and their challenges. For all the American citizens out there who feel you're falling behind, who feel the American dream's not working for you, the immigrants didn't do that to you.
No, they didn't.
The big corporations did that to you. The 1% did that to you. We need to be the party of working people, and that includes a party of immigrants. But first, we have to tell working people in America who are hurting that we're going to be on their side every single time against those big corporations who created this mess to begin with. And remind people we're all in this together. If we don't change that debate, that politics that's holding us back, we won't get all these reforms people are talking about. That's what we need to do as Democrats.
Congresista, if I could, I'm sorry. Congresista O'Rourke, ¿qué haría usted en el primer día si usted es presidente sobre esta realidad que está ocurriendo? What would you do, Congressman, day one at the White House?
Stop!
Vamos a tratar cada persona con
Does he not speak English?
Y dignidad que merecen como humanos. We would not turn back.
What is this?
And her father, Oscar. We would accept them into this country and
what country am I
our
in?
own asylum laws. We would not build walls. We would not put kids in cages. In fact,
I don't know why he was going between Spanish and English.
I think it's being broadcast on Telemundo as well.
We would not prosecute any family because you was fleeing violence for the repeal of.
To be fair to anybody that may ever watch this, I don't care they're speaking Spanish. I'm just confused as to why they are.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that I don't care. It's just like I have no like aggression towards Spanish speakers.
I don't. I'm just don't understand like why they're doing it.
So they could be cared for in the community at a fraction of the cost. And then we would rewrite our immigration laws in our own image. Free dreamers forever from any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens here in this country. Invest in solutions in Central America, work with regional stakeholders so there's no reason to make that 2,000-mile journey to this country.
Oh God, it just dropped into 144p for me.
Very clear. The reason that they're separating these little children from their families is that they're using Section 1325 of that act, which criminalizes coming across the border, to incarcerate the parents and then separate them. Some of us on this stage have called to end that section, to terminate it. Some, like Congressman O'Rourke, have not. And I want to challenge all of the candidates to do that. I just think it's a mistake, Beto. I think it's a mistake. And I think that if you truly want to change the system, then we got to repeal that section. If not, then it might as well be the same policy.
His name's Robert, actually.
Actually, as a member of Congress, I helped to
Ted
introduce
Cruz
legislation
is
that would ensure that we don't criminalize
a Hispanic guy using a white guy's name, and Beto O'Rourke is a white guy using a Hispanic dude's name.
Interesting.
Ted Cruz's name is Raphael. Beto's real name is Robert.
Rewrite of our immigration laws, and if we do that, I don't think it's asking too much for people to follow our laws when they come to this country.
I'm talking about millions of folks A lot of folks that are coming are not seeking asylum. A lot of them are undocumented immigrants, right? And you said recently that the reason you didn't want to repeal Section 1325 was because you were concerned about human trafficking and drug trafficking. But let me tell you what. Section 18, Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Title 21, and Title 22 already cover human trafficking and drug trafficking. I think that you should do your homework on this issue. If you did your homework on this issue, you would know that
did your homework.
This is an issue that we should and could be talking about for a long time, and we will for a long time.
Can we talk about the conditions to why people are coming here?
Let's Savannah. I know it's just we could go on.
But rather than talk about specific provisions, we really have to talk about why these people are coming to our country and what
I'd love to go on about this forever.
Make a difference in these
what is dolce de leche?
Continue the discussion.
Sorry, I'm looking at recipes. Sorry.
Let's talk about what Secretary Castro just said. He wants to no longer have it be a crime to illegally cross the border. Do you support that? Do you think it should be a civil offense only? And if so, do you worry about potentially incentivizing people to come here?
Immigrants, they do not diminish America. They are America. And I am happy to look at his proposal, but I do think you want to make sure that you have provisions in place that allow you to go after traffickers and allow you to go after people who are violating the law. What I really think we need to step back and talk about is the economic imperative here. And that is that 70 of our Fortune 500 companies are headed up by people that came from other countries. 25% of our U.S. Nobel laureates were born in other countries. We have a situation right now where we need workers in our fields and in our factories. We need them to start small businesses. We need their ideas. And this president has literally gone backwards at a time where our economy needs immigrants. And so my proposal is to look at that 2013 bill that passed the Senate with Republican support, to upgrade that bill, to make it as good as possible and get it done. It brings the debt down by $158 billion. Senator. It gives a path to citizenship for citizens.
Citation, please, lady.
Citizens. And it would Senator, be so much better for our economy in America.
That's time. Thank you. Congressman Ryan, same question. Should it be a crime?
They let her go over her time by a lot.
Should it be a civil offense only?
Well, I agree with Secretary Castro. I think there are other provisions in the law that will allow you to prosecute people for coming over here if they're dealing in drugs and other things.
The guy that was in Congress before him got expelled for forcing his campaign staff into slave labor.
We're talking about this father who got killed with his daughter.
That's why Republicans love him so much.
And the issues here, the way these kids are being treated, if you go to Guantanamo Bay, there are terrorists that are held
which shouldn't
get better
exist.
health care than those kids that have tried to cross the border in the United States. That needs to stop. And I think the president
not everybody at Guantanamo is a terrorist.
Ask doctors and nurses to go immediately down to the border and start taking care of these kids. What kind of country are we running here where we have a president of the United States who's so focused on hate and fear and division? And what has happened now, the end result, is now we've got kids literally laying in their own snot with 3-week-old diapers that haven't been changed. We've got to tell this president that is not a sign of strength, Mr. President.
No shit, they haven't been changed if it's 3-week-old.
Senator Booker, I'll go to you. But no, a lot of people, Jose asked the question, if you're president on day one, what will you do?
Jose! His name isn't Jose!
Here.
Julian.
There's been a lot of talk about what you'll do in the first 100 days, about legislation. What will you actually do with these families? How will you care for them? Will they be detained or will they not be?
Well, this is a related and brief point, because what we're talking about, what Secretary Castro and I are talking about, is that we have the power to better deal with this problem through the civil process than the criminal process. I have been to
they're playing nice so that if one of them wins, they can be on the VP ticket.
People are profiting off incarceration and their immigration lockups. Our country has made so many mistakes by criminalizing things, whether it's immigration, whether it's mental illness, whether it's addiction. We know that this is not the way to deal with problems. There's a humane way that affirms human rights and human dignity.
Or wanting to have a gun.
This problem. Donald Trump isn't solving this problem. We've seen under his leadership a surge at our border.
I am addicted to guns.
We solve this problem by making investments in the Northern Triangle to stop the reasons why people are being driven here in the first place. And we make sure we use our resources to provide health care, to affirm the values and human and dignity of the people that come here, because we cannot sacrifice our values, our ideals as a nation for border security.
Our
we can
values.
have both by doing this the right
Maybe
way.
your values, that's all. I have different values.
Inslee on this.
There's no government like no government.
Same question I just asked Cory Booker. I have yet to hear an answer from anyone on this stage. What will you do with the families that will be here?
There is no reason for the detention and separation of these children. They should be released pending their hearings, and they should have a hearing, and the law should be followed. That's what should happen. And we should do what we're doing in Washington State. I'm proud that we've passed a law that prevents local law enforcement from being turned into mini ICE agents. I'm proud to have been the first governor to stand up against Donald Trump's heinous Muslim ban. I'm proud to be a person who's not only talked about Dreamers, but being one of the first to make sure that they get a college education so that they can realize their dreams. These are some of the most inspirational people in our state. And I'll leave you with this thought if you want to know what I think. Donald Trump the other day tried to threaten me. He thought it was a threat to tell me that he would send refugees in Washington State if we passed the law that I passed. And I told him that's not a threat at all. We welcome refugees into our state. We recognize diversity as a strength. This is how we've built America.
To be fair, that is admittedly badass.
We're going to switch to another topic now. We've got a lot to get through. Let's talk.
How long is this supposed to go?
From his family when he came to this country.
About another hour
Iran right now because we're working against the clock. Tankers have been attacked. The U.S. drone has been shot down. There have been disturbing threats.
This is the 7th decade in a row you've used an exploding boat to go to war.
You can't just for a moment to put aside how you think we may have gotten here, but what I want to know is how do you dial it back? So a show of hands, who as president would sign on to the 2015 nuclear deal as it was originally negotiated? Well, Senator Booker.
Some of them looked hesitant.
First and foremost, it was a mistake to pull out of that deal. And one of the reasons why we're seeing this hostility now is because Donald Trump is launching us to a far more dangerous situation. Literally, he took us out of a deal that gave us transparency into their nuclear program and pushed back a nuclear breakout 10, 20 years. And now we see Iran threatening to go further, and we're being pulled in further and further into this crisis. We need to renegotiate and get back into a deal, but I'm not going to have a primary platform to say unilaterally I'm going to rejoin that deal, because when I'm president of the United States, I'm going to do the best I can to secure this country and
when I'm president, everybody gets a pony.
If I have an opportunity to leverage a better deal, I'm going to do it.
All right, Senator Klobuchar, I'd like you to answer that question because you said you would negotiate yourself back into the Iranian agreement. Can you argue that nuclear pact, as it was ratified, was a good deal?
Yes, it was.
It was imperfect, but it was a good deal for that moment. I would have worked to get longer sunset periods, and that's something we could negotiate to get back in the deal.
Question, what's the sunset period?
Donald Trump told us
basically sunset provision is like an end point to certain provisions in an agreement or a bill.
From the Iranians,
like there was an assault weapons ban in the U.S., but there was a sunset provision which made it temporary.
And the Iranians have told us this. And so that's where we are right now. He has made us less safe than we were.
She said the Iranians.
So what I would do is negotiate us back into that agreement, is stand with our allies and not give unlimited leverage to China and Russia, which is what he has done. And then, finally, I would make sure that if there is any possibility of a conflict, and we're having this debate in Congress right now, that he comes to Congress for an authorization of military force. I would do that. And this president is literally every single day 10 minutes away from going to war, one tweet away from going to war. And
I don't think that part's true.
He's too idiotic to do something like that.
Yeah.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
Oh, Tulsi is so anti-war, it's unbelievable.
The 2015 deal. Would you insist, though, that it address Iran's support for Hezbollah?
Let's deal with the situation where we are, where this president and his chicken hawk cabinet have led us to the brink of war with Iran. I served in the war in Iraq at the height of the war in 2005. a war that took over 4,000 of my brothers and sisters in uniforms.
Okay. But she's anti-war.
People need to understand that this war with Iran would be far more devastating, far more costly than anything that we ever saw in Iraq. It would take many more lives. It would exacerbate the refugee crisis, and it wouldn't be just contained within Iran. This would turn into a regional war. This is why it's so important that every one of us, every single American, stand up and say no war with Iran. We need to get back into the Iran nuclear agreement, and we need to negotiate how we can improve it. It was an imperfect deal. There are issues.
Iran actually kept
their missile development
abiding by the agreement even after the U.S. pulled out.
Simultaneously to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon and preventing us from going to war.
Time is up. I have just a very quick follow-up. Well, what would your red line be? For military.
Iran wanted nuclear energy, not to make bombs, but everybody's like, oh shit, they might make a bomb.
Yeah, you see, that's what I always thought.
Then there would have to be a response. But
because I knew they were building a reactor
and
and
everything.
everything.
To recognize this is Donald Trump and his cabinet, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and others, are creating a situation that just a spark would light off a war with Iran, which is incredibly dangerous. That's why we need to de-escalate tensions. Trump needs to get back into the Iran nuclear deal and swallow his pride. Put the American people first.
Hey, but wait a minute.
All right, we are out of time, and we're up against a hard break, but we will have much more. Mayor de Blasio will have more. The commercial is coming. We will continue our questioning next with Chuck Todd, Rachel Maddow. Stick around.
I love how fucking, like, strict these moderators are. They usually aren't this good with it. Usually they let them get away with fucking murder.
All eyes on the 2020
it's a
election.
3-minute break? Oh my god.
That's pretty short. Well, 4-minute break.
Oh yeah, 4 minutes. It was a minute 50 last time.
They're making a lot of money off of this.
Oh yeah. Well, I muted it, so hopefully they don't get money off.
I'll see.
Actually, I'm gonna pause it. Actually, I can't because I have to know whenever it gets back. Whatever.
It's all good. I'm playing Mario X in the opposite window, and I can still see it, so I know when it comes back.
All right, tell me at like 10 seconds. All
right.
Because I don't want to promote their ads. This has been very interesting. I think the presidential debate was better, but you know, the 2016 one, still.
I mean, these guys are all idiots. I just can't wait to see the Yang Gang tomorrow. I mean, I'll get home right as it starts. Maybe a minute
does it start?
9. I hope 9.
9 a.m.
9 p.m.
Oh, well, that's not bad.
9 a.m. What the fuck? Nobody would watch it.
Yeah, you see, that's what I was like.
That would be questionable debate scheduling.
Yeah.
Yes, Trump's approval rating is meh, but it's going up.
From what I know, yeah.
He's gonna win again. I don't think there's any getting around it.
I want Wang Gang to win, bro.
Yeah, give me my $1,000.
Exactly.
I just want my $1,000. I'm serious.
That's what I want to.
And some people are like, oh, that's a stupid reason. Well, you know what? The government sucks. They might as well pay me to deal with their bullshit, you know?
Exactly.
He's better than the past couple libertarian candidates. The only ones I would vote for at the moment are Arvin Vohra, Adam Kokesh, or Vermin Supreme.
My name is Vermin. My name is Vermin.
My name is Vermin Supreme, and you can vote, and you can vote, and you can vote for me for president if you want to. Oh yeah, and Jesus told me to make Randall Terry gay.
Hell yeah.
Woo! He's turning gay! Remember that?
Yes, I do.
That was, well, I'm not going to get into personal shit on the stream, but that was a certain lovely lady who showed me Vermin Supreme. One you have not spoken to in a very long time.
Bree? Not Bree, Britta?
Yes!
Damn, how did I know that, like, instantly?
I've thought about contacting her, but it's like, it's been so long. That would probably be taken as very unusual.
I have no idea. I don't want to, but
sometimes I feel
that's not reasons I want to get into right now.
I know. Sometimes I feel like tracking people I haven't spoken to down. Sometimes just like be like, hey, what's up? But then I'm like, they'll probably be like, oh, you're a stalker. You're a stalker. You're stalking me. You want to fuck my pussy, you know?
What? Stop that.
Get some help.
Stop it. It's 15 seconds, by the way.
I know.
Lester Holt.
Can't wait to listen to some more clown car shit.
How do you convince some skittish passenger to get on this airplane? We've met a lot of great people.
The most trusted TV news anchor in America.
That's Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt.
Lester Holt.
I kind of trust him.
Nah, bro, your motto has to be the most trusted news network.
Yes.
And welcome back, everyone, to the first Democratic presidential debate from the Arch Center in Miami.
And as we continue the questioning, time to get more members of our team in the mix.
So right now, let's.
I don't know how many there are going to be. It depends who the top candidates are. I'm going to assume the top 5 are going to be Yang, Buttigieg, O'Rourke,
10 tonight, 10 more tomorrow.
Sanders, and Warren.
Was selected at random. Now the candidates will have 60 seconds to
answer. Oh gosh, no, Rachel Maddow!
You see, I recognized her, but I didn't know who she was.
We can do that. By the way, hi Rachel.
She's annoying.
How you doing? Good. And
I can tell.
Ground to cover. We're
she thought we all died
That's slander! YouTube's gonna rape me.
More in this hour. Obviously, because of the size of the field.
Let's hear about guns, bitch. I will wreck you.
I
would pay any of these guys to have a debate about guns.
Hear from everyone.
They're just
I promise everybody. And to begin with, we're going to go with guns and Senator Warren.
Hell yeah, guns.
We are less than 50 miles from Parkland, Florida, where 17 people were killed in a school shooting last year, and where there has been significant activism on gun violence ever since. Many of you are calling for a restoration of an assault weapons ban. But even if implemented, there will still be hundreds of millions of guns in this country. Should there be a role for the federal government?
Mics are on.
Everybody's mics are on. I think we have I heard that too. That's okay. I think we had a little mic issue in the back.
Control room.
I noticed that. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, we have the audience audio. All right.
So
the question is simply this. We're from, I apologize you guys didn't get to hear this, the first part of the question.
That was just weird.
Obviously,
I wonder where that happened. Sabotage.
Activism has become a big part of high school life up there in Broward County. Many of you are calling for tighter gun restrictions. Some of you are calling for the restoration of the assault weapons ban.
I don't see why. Broward County was already pro-gun control anyway.
There's going to be perhaps hundreds of millions of guns still on the streets. Is there a role for the federal government?
They're going to ask about confiscation.
To play in order to get these guns off the streets.
They still have the fucking audio going.
What's happening?
We are hearing our colleagues' audio. If the control room can turn off the mics. Yeah, if the control room can turn off the mics.
It's a sabotage. They want people to hear the shit.
You know, we prepared for everything.
Guess what, guys?
We did not prepare for this.
We are going to take a quick break. We're going to get this technical situation fixed. We will be right back.
Come on, NBC.
It's a fucking excuse to roll more commercials.
I believe it. How long are we gonna get? Another 4 minutes.
Election. Continue to follow the
Pause the video.
It's a scandal. It's a scandal. I love that song so much.
Whatever.
That pisses me off.
I'll mute the audio, but I'll play the video. Yeah, I agree. Oh, they're literally just playing exactly what they played before. Clinton? Trump?
Oh yeah, when
Johnson.
they thought that... Gary! You know that guy.
Yeah, I do. He's my kind of friend. I know his son. His name is Clayton.
A billion people just... Anybody that watches this is gonna Google that and be like, hey, wait a minute!
Hey now, you're an all-star.
Get the game off. I know, you're an all-star.
See, Trump approval rating went up from what it looks like. Oh, my headset's hurting my ears. Ugh.
Oh yeah, he barely won Wisconsin.
It's Wisconsin. The margin in Michigan even closer. Barely 10,000 votes.
This
Trump
bothers
over
me a
Clinton.
lot.
And again, that's the first time since '88 that a Republican carried Pennsylvania here, about 44,000 votes. That's the margin for Trump over Clinton
Knows
in
how to
Pennsylvania.
party.
Trump wins all three other states. Wisconsin,
knows how to party.
Alabama knows how to party.
Pennsylvania
In the
by a combined total of
city
about
of Pittsburgh.
75,000 votes.
In the
That's
city
it, but that's enough to
of
win the Electoral College. So
Hopewell.
for Democrats,
In the city,
they want to reverse the
city
result
of
of 2016.
Philly,
That is the
left
easiest
hot
and most
pocket.
direct path, at least on paper. You flip those
What am I
states
doing?
where Trump's margin was the narrowest, those states
Turning
that
West
had been
Coast pop
voting
lock into
Democratic
the
before
Keystone pop
2016.
lock.
You flip them back, you win the Electoral College, if
the
everything
glitch
else
man
stays
is
the
from
same. So that's the most
Pennsylvania.
direct path for
yes.
Democrats, at least on paper. But hey,
Philadelphia.
things can change over the course of a few years. There are other
Philadelphia's
states
fun.
to be keeping an eye
No,
on
it's
as well.
not.
I'll give you an example.
Man, I really want to
Right
go to
here,
Texas.
Florida. We always talk about Florida, right? Remember
Texasburg.
Florida from back in
Matching names,
2000.
yeah.
Well, here's one. Again, Donald
Is
Trump,
it- oh,
somewhat of a
nice. I was
surprise
about
on
to say,
election
like,
night. I think the Clinton campaign
It's not
had
one of
been
those
feeling
like
decent
abandoned
about
cities
Florida,
my
but
fucking
Trump
dad is
pulled out
fascinated
Florida
with,
in
I hope.
2016.
Dude, abandoned things are
29
awesome,
electoral
okay?
votes right there.
Why are they
We
cool?
obviously
If they're so
expect to
cool,
be
why
very
were they
competitive in
abandoned?
2020 if the
Well,
Democrats
stuff
can
usually
flip
happens,
Florida,
or they
just
go bankrupt,
given the
or
size of the
stuff
state,
like that.
I'm
that was
just
a
saying,
massive
if it's so
change.
great, why
The
is
one
this
cautionary
shit
note
is
for
so great?
Democrats,
Why was
though,
it
in a
abandoned?
big
No,
year
it's fun to
2018
explore.
midterms, it was not big enough to carry over to Florida. In Florida,
Imagine how fun it would have
in the
been to
2018
explore
midterms,
while it was around
Republican
still,
won the
eh?
governor's race. Republican won the Senate race. Ousted a Democratic incumbent, in fact, in that Senate race.
I know, I
So
know.
Florida, it's tantalizing on paper for Democrats. It's always tantalizing on paper for Democrats. But does 2018 tell you that maybe there's a little bit more Republican strength there in Florida? And of course, Arizona. This is one Democrats have been talking about now. A long-time red state that Democrats think
I have a friend who lived
demographically
there.
might be trending in their favor.
Arizona.
I had a friend who lived there, and he
Did
told me a
Did
story
do well
about one
in
of
the
his friends shitting on his floor.
2018 midterms, winning a Senate race there. Clinton got
Hey, could
within
you stop
3
shitting on my
points.
floor? It smells
Democrats
bad. No.
hope that there's some momentum there, some demographics,
Arizona
some
was actually a
political
really
momentum.
close race
They could
in
flip
the
Arizona.
2016 presidential
that could change
election.
things too.
Really?
Yeah, it was much closer than anybody expected it to be. Hillary Clinton actually had a chance to win it. It's generally considered a red state, which makes that weirder.
Man, I wonder if they fixed their stupid audio issue now, after another 4 minutes.
If they didn't, somebody needs fired.
I wonder if just the panic.
We believe we have the technical
Like, whoa,
difficulties.
like they might let out our secrets.
Never say never, but we will march
It seems
forward
like they
here,
were
and I will lean
worried
forward
about
here a
shit
little
like
bit.
that more than
Senator
anything.
Warren, we're going to get to the gun question here. Parkland, Florida. It's just north of here in Broward County. As you know, it has created a lot of teenage activism on the gun issue. It has inspired a lot of you to come out with more robust plans to deal with guns, including assault weapons ban. But even if you're able to...
Assault weapons are already banned. To speak on the issue.
What do you do about the hundreds of millions of guns
Assault rifles are already illegal.
And does the federal government have to play a role in dealing with it?
So, in this period of time that I've been running for president, I've had more than 100 town halls. I've taken more than 2,000
Don't like guns? Don't buy one.
unfiltered
Simple.
questions. And the single hardest
Boy, we got 2
question
viewers,
I've
bro.
gotten,
Got 2
I got
viewers.
one from a little boy and I got one from a little girl. And that is to say, when you're president, how are you going to keep us safe? That's our responsibility as adults.
He's using that one debate technique. It's emotional. I don't remember what it's called. Emotional something.
Teenagers. And they won't just die in mass shootings. They'll die on sidewalks. They'll die in playgrounds. They'll die in people's backyards.
Die death and shit. That's
gun
like
most
are
is
suicides.
a national
Just there.
health emergency in this
good
country.
amount of gun.
And we need to
That's
treat
for
it like
suicide.
that. So what can we do? We can do the
No,
things
it's
that are
not.
sensible. We can
No,
do the
it's not.
universal background checks.
If you
We
remove
can
suicides,
ban the
police
weapons of
shootings,
war.
burglary,
But
self-defense
we can also
instances,
double down on
then
the
there are
research
only about
and
3,000
find out
homicides a
what
year.
really
That's not
works.
insane.
Where
That
it
really,
is
really
that we
isn't.
can make
Weapons
the
of war are
differences
already
at the
banned.
margins that will keep our
Yeah.
children safe. We need to treat this
Okay.
like the
Thank you, Senator
virus
Warren.
that's killing our children.
You didn't address, do you think the federal government needs to go and figure out a way to get the guns?
It's not your
that's already
job.
out there?
What I
Figure out
think
how to
we
get
need
it
to do
Very
is we need to treat it like a serious research problem, which we
Nope.
have not done. You know,
Nope.
guns in the hands of a collector who's had them for decades,
It's
who's
not.
never fired them, who takes safety seriously. That's very different from guns that are sold and turned over quickly. We can't treat this as an across-the-board problem. We have to treat it like a public health emergency. That means bring data to bear, and it means make real change in this country, whether it's politically popular or not.
Senator Booker, you have a program.
Fight for our children.
There we go.
You have a program. Senator Booker.
Oh, so fuck my constituencies.
Yes.
Gotta bring the kids into it, of course, always. But the kids!
But the
Well, first of all, I
children.
want to say my colleague and I both have been hearing this on the campaign trail. But what's even worse is I hear gunshots in my neighborhood. I think I'm the only one, I hope I'm the only one on this panel here that had 7 people shot in their neighborhood just last week. Someone I knew, Shawn Smith, was
is this
killed with
the
an assault
Ohio dude?
rifle at the top of my block
No.
last year.
No.
For
I was
millions
like,
of
is that true?
Americans, this is
Nobody
not a
was killed with an
policy
assault
issue.
rifle
This
where
is
you
an
live.
urgency.
Stop
And for
fucking
those who have
lying.
not been directly affected, they're tired of living in a
Assault
country
rifle.
where kids go to school to learn about reading, writing, and arithmetic, and how to deal with an active shooter in their school.
Yeah.
This is something
never been
that
taught
I'm
how to deal with
tired of, and I'm
active shooters.
tired of
Just
hearing
want to
people,
make that
all they have to offer is thoughts and prayers. In my faith, people say faith without works is dead. So we will find a way. But the reason we have a problem right now is we've let the corporate gun lobby frame this debate. It is
There's
time
no
that we
problem.
have bold actions and a bold
This
Actually,
is
I gotta
not
say,
I will
the
get that
The people
done
who are
as
like,
President
oh, I
Biden
give my prayers, it's like, I'm going to
states,
do
because
nothing
this is
but
not
keep my
about
conscience clear.
policy,
I'm
this
sorry,
is
I know you're
personal.
Thank you,
Christian
Senator
and all
Secretary
religious,
Castro,
but still.
talk to you about something that Senator Booker
It's
just
not my
mentioned,
job
the
to do
idea
anything
of
about this because
active
Jesus
shooter
would have
drills
said,
in schools.
let
The school
people have
shootings
what they
seem
want.
like
Yeah.
an almost every day or every week occurrence now. They don't make a complete news cycle anymore, no matter the death toll. As parents are so afraid as their kids go off to school that their kids will be caught up in something like this. Next to nothing
Well,
has
just make
changed
sure
in
your kids
the
aren't
law
little
that
bitches.
might affect
Make
the
sure they're at
prevalence of school
home.
shootings.
The odds of this
Is this a
happening to your
problem that
kids
is
are
going to
extremely
continue to get
thin.
worse
Your kid is
over our
more likely to
lifetimes,
get
or is there
cancer.
something that you would do as president that you really think would turn it around?
Yeah,
Just like
I
I'm
don't
more
know
likely to
the-
get cancer watching
the dad
this.
of a 10-year-old girl.
Okay,
Diana,
YouTube,
who's
if you
here
could stop
tonight.
refreshing every 10 freaking
And
seconds, that'd be awesome.
The worst thing is knowing that your child might be worried about what could happen at school, a place that's supposed to be safe. The answer to your question is no.
Oh, I gotta play back here again. God dang it.
He thinks that there's going to be a Democratic
Activists of
Senate,
Parkland,
House, and
folks
presidency.
from
It's not
Moms Demand,
happening.
who have risen up across the United States and inspired
Not all
so
three.
many people.
No,
You know, we may not have seen yet legislative
Moms Demand Action is a joke.
but
We've called them.
I remember.
We're getting closer.
They didn't want to talk
The
to
House
us.
took a vote. In the
They
Senate,
didn't want to answer
the
any
question
questions.
often
They
is,
wouldn't let
if
us
it's-
even
if the decision is
join.
between 60 votes, a filibuster, or passing common sense gun reform, I'm going to choose common sense gun reform. So
Common
I
sense.
believe that we're going to be able to get that
That means
done
no
in
common
2021.
sense.
Secretary Castro, thank you.
That means I want to. You can't. That means we're pro-choice until you want to own a gun.
Common sense in the worlds of a Democrat? Unheard
You're
of.
talking about in the schools. These kids are traumatized. I support all the gun reforms here. We need to start dealing with the trauma that our
Damn it,
kids
Tim.
have.
Can I blame
We
you
need
for this one?
Trauma-based care in every
What do you mean?
school.
This
We
dude?
need
Can I blame you
social
for this,
emotional
dude?
learning in every school.
I didn't vote for him.
90% of the shooters
okay,
who do
good.
school shootings come
He's
from the
not- he
school
hasn't
they're
been in my
and
district in, like,
73%
10
of them
years.
Feel shamed, traumatized, or bullied. We need to make sure that these kids
'Cause the
feel
Republicans
connected to the
gerrymandered
school.
the
That means a
district
mental
so
health
that,
counselor in every single school in the United States.
he would be
We need to
secluded to
start
just
playing
Youngstown,
offense.
pretty
If
much.
our kids are so traumatized that they're getting a gun and going into our schools, we're doing something wrong too, and we need reform around trauma-based care.
Congressman O'Rourke, you're a Texan who's campaigned.
I agree, kind of.
all over the state in 2018 in the most conservative parts there. What do you tell a gun owner who may agree with you on everything else? Okay, but says, you know what, the Democrats, if I vote for them in there, they're going to take my gun away. And even though I agree with you on all these other issues, how do you have that conversation?
Here's how we had that conversation.
Especially in Texas.
I actually want to hear this.
What
I'm curious.
I learned from those students who survived the Santa Fe High School shooting. A young student named Bree, her friend Marcel, who survived another shooting the mother of a victim who lost her life, Rhonda Hart. They talked about universal background checks where you close every loophole. We know that they save lives. Talked about ending the sales of assault weapons into our communities.
There are assault weapons in the communities, and there are background checks.
As effectively and as efficiently
already,
as possible.
there have been for a long time. I don't even think there should be, but you know.
Red flag laws, so that if someone poses a danger
Red
to
flag
themselves
laws
or to
are
someone else,
basically
they're stopped
somebody doesn't
before
like the
it's too
fact you
late.
have a
You are
gun, they
found
call the
in each
cops,
one of
they
those
take your guns.
254
Yeah,
counties.
sounds right.
Is it Democrats and independents and Republicans, gun owners and non-gun owners alike agreed? But this effort must be led by the young people that you referenced at the beginning of this issue. Those students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas led
Most
the charge
young people
here
that I know
in
are
Florida,
pro-gun
and
as
they've been
fuck.
able to change those laws. They're making our democracy
same
work,
here.
ensuring that our values and our interests and our priorities are
Gen
reflected
Z
in the
loves
laws
guns.
that we pass.
We all grew up with Call of Duty.
Congressman O'Rourke, hang on. Let me give 30 seconds. Senator Klobuchar, the Iron Range. I'm curious. Gun confiscation, right? If the government is buying back, how do you not have that conversation?
Well, that's not confiscation. You would give them the offer to buy back their gun. But I'll say this: I look at these proposals.
What if they don't want
and
to give it
I
up,
say,
huh?
Exactly.
Does this hurt my Uncle Dick and his deer stand, coming from a proud
What?
hunting and fishing state? These proposals
Oh, shut
don't
up,
do that.
Minnesota.
When I was a prosecutor, I
Fuds.
supported the assault weapon ban. When I was in the Senate, I saw those moms from Sandy Hook come
There
and try
are
to
no assault
advocate for
weapons.
change, and we all failed. And then now these Parkland kids from Florida, they started literally a national shift. You know why? It's just like with gay marriage. When kids talk to their parents and their grandparents, they say, I don't understand why we can't put these sensible things in place. Say, listen. And if
These
we get
aren't
bested
sensible
by a bunch of
things.
17-year-olds, it's the best thing
Senator,
that ever
thank
happened.
you.
We need to get
Senator, thank you.
Senator Booker, let me go to you on another matter,
another
actually. Senator Mitch McConnell says that his most consequential achievement as Senate Majority Leader was preventing President Obama from filling a Supreme Court seat. Having served with Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, do you believe they would confirm your court nominees?
I'm going to use 25 seconds just to say there's one thing we don't all agree with when it comes to guns, and I think it's common sense, and over 70% of Americans agree with me. If you need a license to drive a car, you should need a license to buy and own a firearm.
No. Oh my God.
Not everybody in this field agrees
Oh,
with that,
he
but
went
in states
there.
like Connecticut that did that, they saw 40% drops in gun violence and 15%
Oh,
drops
he
in
went there.
suicides. We need to start
Oh,
having
he went
bold
there.
agendas on guns.
You can get
when it
a
comes
gun,
to the Supreme
even
Court
if,
very
like,
clearly.
black markets,
I agree with my
stuff like
friend,
that. If they're going to ban guns, people are going to get guns.
We are going to get to 50 votes in the
The
Senate.
overwhelming
This
majority
is
of guns
a
used in
team sport.
crime are stolen.
Whoever is armed
Exactly.
by need needs to campaign in places like South Carolina because we can elect Jamie Harris.
Then again,
They need to
that's it.
campaign in
Suicide's gone.
places
No more
like
suicide.
Iowa, because we can win a Senate seat there. This is about getting us back to having
You're not
50
winning a Senate
votes
seat
in the
in
Senate
Iowa.
and more, so that we can not
God, I
only
hope not.
balance the Supreme Court, but start to pass an aggressive agenda that, frankly, isn't so aggressive because most of America agrees with the policy objectives of our party.
I don't.
Mayor de Blasio, I'm going to go to you on this for a follow-up. Mayor de Blasio, you're using
In fairness, we have to actually.
Congressman Delaney, you'll have some time in a moment on this issue.
Ha! Get fucked.
Congressman Delaney, I'll give you some time in a moment. Mayor de Blasio, as an executive in the largest
Get
city in
fucked.
this country, you are used to
Nobody
saying
likes you, John
what you
Delaney.
want to
Nobody
have
knows who you
happen
are,
and
even though he
having
was
it
the
happen.
first major Democrat
If
to
you
announce.
nominate a
Really?
Supreme Court nominee
Yes.
as President of the United
Back in
States and Mitch
2017.
McConnell is still Senate Majority Leader, what makes you believe that
Which
he
was
would
pretty
allow
soon,
you to
in my
make
opinion.
a nominee?
Rachel, I am Chief Executive
I
of
didn't
Nations
know
Law
that.
this city, and I also want to just say something quick on the gun issue and come to your question. Look, I run the largest
I think
police
I
force
put
in America,
a,
too, and if we're going to stop these shootings, we're going to get these
voice
guns
gate
off
on
the
my
street, we
mic,
have to have
so
a very
hopefully
different
that'll
relationship
fix any
between our
sounds.
police and our community. I
And
also
I'm
want to
speech
say there's
jamming
something
myself. Doesn't help. Turn off monitor. I don't know why it keeps doing a connection error. Maybe it's like being like, ooh, I know you're streaming.
on the streets of our city and all over this country,
Yeah.
including how to
Dante
deal with
is
the
his
fact
son's
that he
name.
has to
What the
take
fuck?
special
What's his son's
caution
name?
because there have been too many
Dante.
tragedies
Dante's
between
Inferno?
our young men and our police too, as we saw recently.
That
in
would be
Indiana.
funny.
So we need to have a different conversation in this country about guns, but also a different conversation about policing that brings police and community together. We've done that in New York City, and we've driven down crime while we've done it. But to your question,
Oh
about
my
Mitch
gosh,
McConnell,
the gun
there's a
control
political
issue is the
solution that we
single
have to come
biggest
to grips with.
losing
The
issue for
Democratic
Democrats.
Party would stop acting like the party of
Because a lot of
elites
people like
and
guns.
be the party of
I know,
working people again,
shocker.
and go into states, including red states, to convince people we're on their side. We can put pressure on their
Wait,
side.
they're not on our side, though.
Vote for the nominees that are put forward. Decent jurists deserve that right.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio.
Senator Warren, I'm going to get you. I will get you 30 seconds. I promise. Let me get this question. We're trying. I know you guys. We got other issues we're trying to get to, including a big one coming up in a minute. But Senator Warren, I want to continue on the Mitch McConnell thing because you have a lot of ambitious plans. You have a plan for that. Okay. We talked about the Supreme Court. Do you have a plan to deal with Mitch McConnell if you don't beat him in the Senate? If he's still sitting there as the Senate Majority Leader, it's very plausible you be elected president with a Republican Senate. Do you have a plan to deal with Mitch McConnell?
I do.
Damn. Woo! I do. Love it. What's your plan? Speak, O wise one.
We are a democracy. And the way
No, we're not.
democracy
We're
is supposed to work
Republic.
is the will of the people matters. Now,
We're a democratic
we for far
republic.
too long have had a Congress in Washington.
What about the will of
that
the
has
people that
just
filled those
completely
Senate
dismissed
seats?
What people care about across this country. They have made this country work much better for those who can make giant contributions, made it work better for those who hire armies of lobbyists and lawyers, and not made it work for the people. Well, here's how I see this happening. Number one, sure.
And you're so
I want to see us
innocent.
get a Democratic majority in the Senate. But short of a Democratic majority in the Senate, you better understand.
Not happening.
The fight still goes on. It starts in the White House, and it means that everybody we energize in 2020
White House.
stays on
I
the
just
front
realized I didn't full
lines
screen the
come
video.
January 2021.
Turn the White House into a black house, am I
We
right?
have to push from the outside, have leadership from the inside,
Okay.
and make this Congress
I wanna make it a
reflect
bathhouse.
the will
I'm going to
of the people.
I'm going to get a couple of you in here. I'm going to get you a couple in here. 30 seconds. Congressman Delaney, you seem to believe you can do everything in a bipartisan manner. Mitch McConnell
You can't,
doesn't operate
'cause
that
you're not
way.
gonna be
He operates
president.
differently. Why do you think he is going to
You don't have
conform
a-
to your style?
Dude, you can't
I
be
think we need
president
to
unless
get
you have a
things done.
catchy
That's
name.
why I believe
I'm
we need to
sorry.
operate in
Yeah,
a
sounds about right.
bipartisan manner. Listen, I'll sign into law bills that come to the White House that are passed on a party line basis, absolutely. But all the big transformative things we've ever done in this country's history have happened when huge majorities of the American people get behind them, which is why we need real solutions, not impossible promises. We need to put forth ideas that work, whether it's on health care, creating universal health care so that every
wonder if
American
I
gets
put
health
this
care,
in theater
but
mode.
not running on making private insurance illegal.
Okay.
The gun issue is related. The
definitely
gun
has that
safety issue is
fucking-
related because
oh, God.
I can't tell you how many times I've been with folks in Western Maryland, and they've said to me, you know, Democrats don't do anything for us, Republicans don't do anything for us. You fight all the time, so they vote on that single issue.
Okay,
if we
thank you,
become the
Congressman.
party of getting things done for
understand.
the American people
Senator
with real
Booker,
solutions, not
hang
impossible
on.
promises.
Yeah, a lot of them do vote on the gun
Just
issue
30
alone.
seconds. Senator Booker, 30
I
seconds.
did for a while.
How do you deal with Mitch McConnell? You've been in the Senate. You can't get bills on the floor right now with Mitch McConnell. Presidents can't do it. Is President Booker going to get his bills on the floor with Senator McConnell?
You know, when I got to the United States Senate, going back to what de Blasio said, as an African-American man in an African-American
Blasio, just call him de
I knew
Blasio.
one of the biggest issues was criminal justice reform. From police accountability to dealing with the fact that we have a nation that has more African-Americans under criminal supervision than all the slaves in 1850. And when I got to the Senate, people told me we could not get a
you
comprehensive
don't think
criminal
there's
justice
a...
reform.
I'm not
bill
going
done.
there.
And as my colleagues in the Senate know, I fought on that bill from the day I got to the Senate, built coalitions across the aisle, and today we passed the First Step Act. It's not as far as I want to go, but thousands of people will be liberated. I've taken on tough problems that people said we cannot achieve, and I've been able to get things accomplished.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Rachel's got the next question.
We are going, hold on,
We're going
Governor,
next, please.
you're going to be happy with where we go. Governor Inslee, this
Just
next
give us a
question
second.
is to you. You got me? You got me?
Play back here. What the fuck?
Oh,
climate change is a
serious
huge
flooding
issue.
on sunny
Oh, is that
parts
what
of
this is?
Miami Beach and the Keys could be underwater in our lifetimes. Does your plan save Miami? Does your plan save Miami?
Yes, first by taking away the filibuster from Mitch McConnell.
The Florida
to
Keys could be
start with.
underwater
We
in
have
our
to do
lifetime.
that. Look at
Why do they keep
We're the first
mentioning
generation
filibusters?
to feel the sting of climate change.
Why do they keep mentioning
We're the
filibusters?
last that can do something
Because they
about it.
can't get
Our
anything
towns are
done.
burning,
Because Obama
our
couldn't get
fields
any
are
bills
flooding,
passed
Miami
because of it.
is inundated. And we have to understand, this is a climate crisis.
The planet's on fucking fire.
All right, Bill Nye, the
And it is
mechanical
our
engineer.
last chance in the administration, next one, to do something
Bill
about
Nye,
it.
the script reader.
And we need to do what I've done in my state. We've passed a 100% clean electrical grid bill. We now have a vision statement, and my plan has been called the gold standard of putting people to work. But the most important thing on this, in the biggest decision for the American public, is who's going to make this the first priority?
Them.
By
the only
who?
candidate and the only one who's saying this has to be the top priority of the United States, the organizing principle to mobilize the United States so that we can do what we've always done, lead the world and invent the future and put 8 million people to work.
Governor,
that's what we're going to do.
Governor,
Congressman O'Rourke, you've also
never did that
put
at
in
all.
a big climate change plan from your campaign. You want some big changes in a pretty short period of time, including switching to renewable energy, pushing to replace gas-powered cars in favor of electric ones.
Oh, they're pushing to do
a
it.
voter who supports the overall goal of what you're trying to do, but suddenly feels as if government's telling them how to live and ordering them how to live. What is that balance like?
I think you've got to bring everybody in to the decisions and the solutions to the challenges that we face. That's why we're traveling everywhere, listening to everyone. We were in Pacific Junction, a town that had never meaningfully flooded before, just up against the Missouri River in Iowa. And every home in that community had flooded. There were farms just outside of Pacific Junction that were effectively lakes. Those farmers already underwater in debt. Their markets closed.
Goddamn stupid playback errors.
In our administration,
Beto makes me want to kill myself.
Resiliency in those communities, in Miami.
I mean, he
in
lost
Houston,
to Ted
Texas,
Cruz,
those
and
places
Ted
that are on
Cruz
the
lost
front
to Trump.
lines
So
of
how
climate
does he expect
change
to beat
today.
Trump?
We're going to mobilize $5 trillion in this economy over the next 10 years. We're going to free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, and we're going to put farmers and ranchers in the driver's seat. Renewable and sustainable agriculture to make sure that we capture more carbon out of the air and keep more of it in the soil, paying farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide. If all of us does all that we can, then we're going to be able to keep this planet from warming another 2 degrees
farmers
Celsius
to capture
and
carbon.
ensure that we
You
match
what?
what this country can do and live up to our promise and our potential.
30 seconds, Secretary Castro. Who pays for the mitigation to climate, whether it's building seawalls, for people that are perhaps living in places that they shouldn't be living? Is this a federal government issue that needs to do that? Do they have to move these people? What do you do about that where maybe they're building a house someplace that isn't safe? Who pays to build that house? And how much should the government be bailing them out?
Well, I don't think that represents the vast majority of the issue. In fact, my first visit after I announced my candidacy wasn't to Iowa or New Hampshire, it was to San Juan, Puerto Rico. Because people should know that if I'm elected
Puerto Rico. Okay, you have an accent. We get it. Shut up.
One of the few candidates in this race
he's going to push it because he's going to use it.
With a track record of getting things done. When I was mayor of San Antonio, we moved our local public utility. We began to shift it from coal-fired plants to solar and other renewables, and also created more than 800 jobs doing that. And when I was HUD Secretary, we worked on the National Disaster Resilience Competition to invest in communities that were trying to rebuild from natural disasters in a sustainable way. That's the way that we're going to help make sure that we're all safer in the years to come and that we combat climate change. And if I'm elected president, the first thing that I would do, like Senator Klobuchar also has said, is sign an executive order recommitting us to the Paris Climate Accord so that we lead again.
They should shut the mics
I got
off.
a full question for you.
I agree.
Which is simply this. There are a lot of the climate plans include pricing carbon, taxing carbon in some way. This type of proposal has been tried in a few places, whether it's Washington State, where voters voted it down. You've had the Yellow Vest movement. We had in Australia one party get rejected out of fear of the cost of climate change sort of being put on the backs of the consumer. If pricing carbon is just politically impossible, how do we pay for climate mitigation?
Well, there's a variety of different ways to pay.
Also, how would we measure that
ways
shit?
of raising revenue.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to build our way out of this and grow our way out of it. But let me just talk real quick to the previous question about real politics. We could talk about climate, we could talk about guns, we could talk about all of these issues that we all care about. We have a perception problem with the Democratic Party. We are not connecting to the working class people in the very states that I represent, in Ohio, in the industrial Midwest. We've lost all connection. That we have got to change the center of gravity of the Democratic Party.
This guy certainly has.
Coastal and elitist and Ivy League, which is the perception. To somebody from the forgotten communities that have been left behind for the last 30 years, to get those workers back on our side so we can say we're going to build electric vehicles, we're going to build solar panels. But if you want to beat Mitch McConnell, this better be a working class party if you want to go into Kentucky and take his rear end out. And if you want to take Lindsey Graham out, you got to have a blue-collar party.
Take his rear end
go
out.
into the textile communities in South Carolina. So
go fall out when I'm done with it.
Thank you, Congressman Ryan.
All I'm saying here
Thank you, Congressman Ryan.
all I'm saying is here, if we don't address that fundamental problem with our connection to workers, white, black, brown, gay, straight, working class people, none of this is going to get done, Chuck.
Thank you very much. We're going to keep moving. Congressman Delaney, I'm going to get to you.
I introduced the only bipartisan carbon tax bill in Congress.
All right. 30 seconds go.
All the economists agree that a carbon pricing mechanism works. You just have to do it right. You can't put a price on carbon, raise energy prices, and not give the money back to the American people. My proposal, which is put a price on carbon, give a dividend back to the American people. It goes out one pocket, back in the other.
Thank you, Congressman.
I can get that passed my first year as president with a coalition of every Democrat in the Congress and the Republicans who live in coastal states. Because Republicans in Florida, they actually care about this issue. This has got to be our way forward. We're actually serious about this issue.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
The audience starts clapping just so shut up.
One of the first things you did after launching your campaign was to issue an apology to the LGBTQ community about your past stances and statements on gay rights. After the Trump administration's rollbacks of civil rights protections for many in that community, why should voters in that community, or voters that care about this issue in general, trust you now?
Let me say that there is no one in our government at any level who has the right to tell any American who they should be allowed to love or who they should be allowed to marry.
Oh my gosh, it's about sexual attraction. Would you shut up, lady?
Congress for over 6 years.
Even straight couples, they get attracted because of that.
LGBTQ equality. I serve on the Equality Caucus and recently voted for passage of the Equality Act. Maybe many people in this country can relate to the fact that I grew up in a socially conservative home, held views when I was very young that I no longer hold today.
I held liberal views,
served with
and then I got cured.
LGBTQ service members, both in training and deployed downrange. I know that they would give their life for me, and I would give my life.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
The workplace. Still, people were unable to find a home for their families. It is this kind of discrimination that we need to address.
But it's not enough. It's not enough. If I can add to this, it's very important.
30 seconds.
It's not the government's job.
Look, civil rights is some place to begin, but in the African-American civil rights community, another place to focus on was to stop the lynching of African Americans. We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African-American trans Americans, and the incredibly high rates of murder. We don't talk enough about
that's
how many
all I hear about all day.
of LGBTQ kids who do not go to school because of fear. It's not enough just to be on the Equality Act. I'm an original co-sponsor.
You get worshipped if you're a trans kid.
To protect LGBTQ Americans every single day from violence.
Thank you, Senator Booker.
Senator Klobuchar, let me put this to you. On the issue of civil rights, for decades, on the issue of civil rights and demographics, honestly, and politics, for decades, the Democratic Party has counted on African American voter turnout as step one to winning elections on a national level. Democrats are counting on the Latino community now and in the future in the same way. What have you done for Black and Latino
Latinos voted for Trump in much larger amounts than they did for Obama.
Really?
Not Obama, Mitt Romney. That's why Trump won. He won with Latino votes.
Opportunity.
Didn't know that.
And to me, this means better child care,
I mean, he didn't win the majority, but he won enough that it made a huge difference.
That works, you need to have retirement that works. You need to have public schools that work. And you also need to make sure that those communities are able to get those jobs of the future, the STEM jobs. In fact, Donald Trump, one of the first bills that he signed, of the 34 he signed where I was the lead Democrat, okay, that's a first up here, was one that was about that, making sure minority community members could share in those jobs. So to me, this is about a few things. It's about an African-American woman that goes to a hospital in New Orleans, says her hands are swollen, and then doctor ignores her and her baby dies. It's about the fact that African-American women make 61 cents for every dollar a white man makes. So in short, we need to, and I will do this.
What about what women make,
The
fake pay gap?
We will work.
Everything it's because men make more. I mean, men work more hours.
Everyone can vote in this country. And we will also go to the next step of criminal justice reform. Senator Booker and I worked on that First Step Act, but we should go to the Second Step Act, which is to help all our communities across.
Senator, thank you very much. 30-second follow-up to you, Secretary Castro. This is a 70% Latino city here in Miami. You are the only Latino Democrat who is running this year in the presidential race. Is that enough of an answer? What Senator
looks like he's got some voters.
There, an economic justice agenda. Is that enough to mobilize Latino voters to stand with the Democratic Party in a big way?
Well, I also think that we have to recognize racial and social justice. And, you know, I was in Charleston not too long ago, and I remembered that Dylan Roof went to the Mother Emanuel AME Church, and he murdered 9 people who were worshiping, and then he was apprehended by police without incident. Well, but what about Eric Garner and Tamir Rice and Laquan McDonald and Sandra Bland and Pamela Turner and Antonio Arce? I'm proud that I'm the only candidate so far that has put forward legislation that would reform our policing system in America and make sure that no matter what the color of your skin is, that you're treated the same, including Latinos who are mistreated too oftentimes by police.
Latinos, you have to fucking pander.
We've got a question, I believe, a viewer.
Latinos.
It's like you're trying to start a lawnmower.
We ask voters across the country to submit their questions to the candidates. Let me read one now. This comes from John in New York. He submitted this question. He asks, does the United States have a responsibility against humanity? Do we have a responsibility to intervene, to protect people?
Oh, Tulsi Gabbard's going to be so good here.
When atrocities do not affect American core interests. I'd like to direct that question to Congressman O'Rourke.
No. Because government shouldn't exist.
John, I appreciate the
aside
question.
from that.
The answer is yes. But that action should always be undertaken with allies and partners and friends. When the United States presents a united front, we have a much better chance of achieving our foreign policy aims and preventing the kind of genocide to which you refer, the kind of genocide that we saw in Rwanda, the kind of genocide we want to stop going forward. But unfortunately, under this administration, President Trump has alienated our allies and our friends and our alliances. He's diminished our standing in the world and he's made us weaker as a country, less able
medals
to
you get.
challenges, whether it's Iran.
The best one is Killionaire.
To do the same. He's embraced strongmen and dictators at the expense of the great democracies. As president, I will make sure that we live our values in our foreign policy. I will ensure that we strengthen those alliances and partnerships and friendships and meet any challenge that we face together. That makes America stronger.
What about the
that makes America pretty good.
What about the War Powers Act being a part of that equation? With deep respect to the congressman, look, we've learned of painful lessons as Americans. That we've gone to war without congressional authorization. And look, this is very personal for me. I know the cost of war. My dad served in the Pacific in World War II in the U.S. Army.
Where were you saying this when Obama was invading people?
Okinawa had half his leg blown off, and he came home with scars, both physical and emotional, and he did not recover. He spiraled downward, and he ultimately took his own life. And that battle didn't kill him, but that war did. And look, even in the humanitarian crisis, and I think we should be ready, Congressman, to intervene. God forbid there is a genocide, but not without congressional approval. Democrats and Republicans, both in the Congress, have not challenged presidents and have let them get away with running the military without the congressional approval. We learned a lesson in Vietnam we seem to have forgotten. And the decisions have to be made by the United States Congress in the name of the
And I want to put this to Congressman Ryan. Today, the Taliban claimed responsibility for killing 2 American service members in Afghanistan. Leaders as disparate as President Obama and President Trump have both said that they want to end U.S. involvement in Afghanistan, but it isn't over for America.
Alright, this playback error was getting really annoying. I'm going to restart my browser. So.
Services Committee, either the Defense Appropriations Committee or the Armed Services Committee. And the lesson that I've learned over the years is that you have to stay engaged in these situations. Nobody likes it. It's tedious.
The idea of Tim Ryan becoming president is so weird to me.
We must be engaged in this. We must have our State Department engaged. We must have our military engaged to the
because you can actually run into him here.
But the reality of it is, this president doesn't even have people appointed in the State Department to deal with these things. Whether we're talking about Central America, whether we're talking about Iran, whether we're talking about Afghanistan, we've got to be completely engaged. And here's why. Because these flare-ups distract us from the real problems in the country. If getting drones shot down for $130 million because the president is distracted, that's $130 million that we could be spending in places like Youngstown, Ohio, or Flint, Michigan, or rebuilding.
I'm going to give you
he's pandering to his home district.
Of course. Is that what you will tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable. We have to bring our troops home.
Notice she uses her soldier veteran sass thing a lot.
Where we have lost so many lives. We've spent so much money that's coming out of every one of our pockets, money that should be going into communities here at home, meeting the needs of the people here at home. We are no better off in Afghanistan today than we were when this war began. This is why it's so important.
Oh my God, look at him. Look at his face.
Who knows the cost?
He always looks like that. It's okay.
He looks like he's gonna kill her.
To do that job when I walk into the.
He always looks like that.
Listen, I'm gonna go down the line. I'm gonna go down the line here. Well, you know what? You felt like she was responding. You get 30 seconds. Go.
Good man.
Fair enough.
Appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying.
I would just say I don't want to be engaged. I wish we were spending all this money in places that I've represented that have been completely forgotten and we were rebuilding. But the reality of it is, if the United States isn't engaged, the Taliban will grow and they will have bigger, bolder terrorist acts. We have got to have some present there.
The Taliban was there long before we came.
They're not going to build a boat and come over here.
We cannot keep U.S. troops deployed to Afghanistan thinking that we're going to somehow squash this Taliban that has been there, that every other country that's tried
I didn't say squash them. When we weren't in there, they started flying planes into our buildings. So I'm just saying right now,
the Taliban didn't attack us on 9/11.
Bullshit. Bullshit didn't happen.
I understand.
That's why I and so many other people joined the military to go after Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban.
The Taliban was protecting those people who were plotting against us. All I'm saying is, if we want to go into elections and we want to say that we got to withdraw from the world, that's what President Trump is saying. We can't. I would love for us to.
Protecting Al-Qaeda right now.
I want to go down.
Saudi Arabia.
It was a false flag.
Finish up foreign policy. It's a simple question. What is the biggest threat to? Who is the geopolitical threat to the United States? Just give me a one-word answer, Congressman Delaney.
No.
Could you repeat the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States right now?
The United States.
Well, the biggest geopolitical challenge is China, but the biggest
geopolitical
threat remains nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Right? So
oh my God, that's not what he meant, dude.
I got you.
Different question.
Totally get it. Go ahead, Governor Inslee.
The biggest threat to the security of the United States is Donald Trump. And there's no
oh my God.
Oh gosh.
Trump is bad.
Greatest geopolitical threat.
He did it again.
The threat that we face is the fact that we are at a greater risk of nuclear war today than ever before in history.
Yes, because we have nuclear bombs.
Threats, economic threat, China, but our major threat right now is what's going on in the Mideast with Iran. If we don't get our
try to keep it slimmer than what we've been going here. One or two words.
Our existential threat is climate change. We have to confront it before it's too late.
Senator
I respect that.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty good answer.
Nuclear proliferation and climate change.
Secretary Castro.
China and climate change.
Congressman Ryan.
China, without a question, they're wiping us.
China. Oh, God damn it.
They're wiping our ass.
Is that what he just said?
For that wide variety of
answers. Of course, Russia.
And I mean that. No, I mean that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That's what this debate is about. This is the best part of
Nobody answered the question the correct way.
Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report outlines multiple instances of potential criminal behavior by President Trump. House Speaker Pelosi has publicly and privately resisted any move toward impeachment in the House. If the House chooses not to impeach, as president,
because he'll win
would you do
again if he gets cleared.
to address the potential crimes that were outlined in Mr. Mueller's report?
I just realized the chat is disabled for this political stream.
Yeah, I know, but did you know that